Harry Potter, Barbie, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Paddington et Aujourd'hui Wonka, vous connaissez forcément ces films, mais peut-être pas l'homme qui est derrière. Cet homme, c'est David Heyman, leur producteur. On l'a rencontré pour qu'il nous raconte les coulisses de son métier de l'ombre.
You know, Hollywood in particular is very aggressive in their pursuit of books. I have book scouts. Most producers and all the studios have book scouts who are telling books that have just gone out for publication. Before they've even gone out to publication, agents have them and producers are calling up and trying to get sight of these books. So it's a very aggressive, quite cutthroat. You know, Harry Potter was an example where I wasn't like ahead of the curve, as it were. I was early. It wasn't yet published. I returned to London in 1996 and managed to persuade Warner Brothers to give me a first look deal in exchange for a first look at whatever I came up with. I have 3 shelves: low priority, medium priority, and top priority. And I had 3 people. There was me, a development person, someone who read, and then there was my secretary. My secretary would read the stuff from the bottom shelf. On a Monday morning, we discuss what we'd read that weekend. And she said, I've read this book. And I said, what was it called? And she said, Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. I said, it's a terrible title. What's it about? And she said, it's about a young boy who goes to wizard school. I said, that's an interesting idea. And I took it home and I read it. And I loved it. I sent it to Warner Brothers, and they took around 3-4 weeks to read it. And then they said, yeah, they didn't know it was going to be big. I didn't know. I thought if I was lucky, it would be a nice, small British film. I didn't think it was going to become what it became. But I loved it. And I think that's the key when I talk about trusting your instincts. I loved it. And that's all that mattered. So we hired a writer just after the second book was published. And then a year later, he was slow in writing, very good writer, but very slow. And slowly the book was getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and he was writing, and then the pressure was getting bigger and bigger and bigger. When we were shooting at the original Privet Drive, we went to shoot there for one night, and it took longer than one night. And when we went back to shoot for a second night, they wanted so much money to film there that it was prohibitive. And so we built Privet Drive on the back lot at the studio. And then Alfonso didn't love that street, so on the third film, having built it, we went somewhere else to film the exterior. So that's an example of you know, responding to a situation and also responding to a director's needs. I think the job is to always say yes. It's just trying to find out different ways to say yes, and to if the director trusts you and understands and appreciates that you are looking out for them and you have their back, you're looking out for their interests, then they are more inclined to listen to you when you say, we can't make this work. But my job is to make everything work for the director. With an adaptation, I think when one options a book, which is what one has to do to secure the rights to make it into a film, one needs to know why one is optioning the book. There can be a myriad reasons. It can be because there is a good idea. The book may not be good, but there's a good idea. There's a character you like. Or the book is glorious. Everything about it you want to make into a film. But you can never do that because the film is a different medium to a novel. So first it's important to understand what one loves about the book and why one's chosen it to adapt.
You see, I'm something of a magician, inventor, and chocolate maker.
Wonka is a hybrid. As I said, it's going towards a book, but it's an original. Even the Willy in the film of Wonka is different to the Willy in the films of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. He's a more innocent, he's a naïf, he's eccentric, but he hasn't yet become the cynical character who locks himself away in the factory that is the character we meet in the book and in the films. When you're doing Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, That's an original with a singular vision, a singular voice. There's no adaptation. In fact, Quentin wrote a book afterwards that was an adaptation of the film, and that's quite a wonderful thing to read. He asked me to produce Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. What a gift that was, and what a privilege. One of the most fun I've had on a film, and I learnt so much from working with him. My job was to support him, and actually it was very easy to fit in. He loves film, and he loves the process of making films. And my experience with him was glorious. He was inclusive. He shared, he has strong opinions. No question about that. He has ideas, but he was very reasonable. There was a time, for example, where in his initial vision, we were filming on, I think, 8 or 12 blocks of Hollywood Boulevard, and the budget wouldn't tolerate that. So he shifted it and made it work on 2 or 3. He is so dexterous and so knowledgeable and has such a vision and understanding, and he's a writer that he can adjust. It's such a pleasure to work with someone who knows exactly what they want. My role was what it does in any film, is to adapt to the director's wants and needs. When I meet a writer and a director in particular, if it's a project that's been brought to me, it's about making sure there's a commonality of vision. There's a shared vision. Once that shared vision is defined, then it's about supporting that director. Working with Greta Gerwig, Paul King, on Paddington and Wonka, Quentin Tarantino, Noah Baumbach, Alfonso Cuarón. They are brilliant, and you have the best chance of making something special if you're working with special people. I am involved in every step. I like to be involved in every step of the creative process, but I'm not a director. And that means that if I disagree with the director, I can question, I can challenge, but ultimately the director's vision, point of view has to win out, because the world is better off without a David Heyman directed film. And I am not the director. The director's the director. And so I have to support that.
The best quality to have when you are a producer is to be good at persuasion.
I think not just for acquiring the rights, but all along the way, because you're trying to get, you're trying to encourage people to work in support of a director's vision. And sometimes you're trying to persuade people to give you, allow you to film in this room, for example, or you're trying to persuade people. And sometimes it's money, but you, no matter whether you're making a film for $60,000, which I've done, or $250 million, which I've done, you never have enough money. No matter what, it's never. So you've got to try and persuade. And then there are people who are tired and they don't want to. You try and persuade them. Everything is about trying to persuade people to do something, to do things for you. As a producer, you can never give in. The solution may not be the solution that you expect. It may not be here. You may have to move somewhere or do something differently. But there's always an answer. Sometimes people say no, and you keep on trying. And sometimes I suppose there is a point where you know on a project that it's not going to happen, that the budget's too great, that it's not coming to, that you have to pause or give up, or one's passion diminishes. That can happen over time. And those are decisions one have to make. But ultimately, as a producer, you have to be resilient and tenacious and to fight the fight and never give in.
Konbini!